Is it worth doing even if I fail? And that actually came from, I'm reading this book right now, and like,
What's the book called?
it's called Daring Greatly by Brene Brown.
Okay.
She is a, what is she? She's a researcher, storyteller, is what her website says, but she basically does like a lot of sociology research. She does a lot of studies. She has two amazing TED Talks, both, each one I guess respectively is on the subjects of vulnerability, and the second one is on shame. And they're incredible. First of all, if you guys haven't seen them, you should check them out.
What's her name again?
Brene Brown.
Renee?
Brene.
Bruh with a B.
With a B.
Yeah.
Double B, B squared.
Okay. Brene.
Brene Brown.
This will be in the show notes.
And I had read like the first half of her book. I actually like zoomed through it during like track season last year, and then I wanted to finish it. So I borrowed a copy right now. And like sometimes self-help books like are exactly what you need. Sometimes it's like getting tortured trying to finish this book. And that's how I feel about this one. But there are some good golden nuggets. And when the time is right, this book really strikes a lot of points with me. So that's one of the main questions I think in the beginning of the book. She talks about, actually I wrote this quote off her website. This is in the book as well. And she said, for years I drew courage from the question, what would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? I even own the paperweight. When I was getting ready to speak at TED this year, I pushed that question out of my head to make room for a new question. What's worth doing even if you fail? And I think that's, I don't know, I think that's an interesting way to pose questions because, you know, we all have grand dreams, don't get me wrong. Especially,
Why not? Why not?
Yeah, exactly. You know, like if you're gonna dream, you might as well dream big. But,
I want a BMW. Right now I have a Nissan, so I'm getting there.
I'm on Team Tesla, but right now it's Team Volkswagen.
Alright.
But I think it's a good, what's the word I'm looking for? It's good to sometimes change your perspective from like these outrageous dreams and having outrageous goals, which is not a bad thing to have, but also like placing yourself in the face of reality and like knowing that, you know, with a lot of the good comes the bad, and like there's always going to be obstacles. And I think what I've learned from my personal life journey is that like we all think that, like we all set goals, and we all think that like our path is going to be like, you know, you take each step, you like put a check mark on the box of each step, and like, you know, eventually you reach your goal. And life turns out to usually hand you a lot more detours than you originally planned. Of course. And sometimes I think like the detours seem so daunting sometimes, and you're like, are these detours or are they failures? So you know, when you and I had finally decided to sit down and talk about this, like you had kind of given some good guidelines to talk, and I thought maybe we could even talk about like, you know, what does failure mean? Not just like in the athlete world, but also as human beings.
Yeah. So for me, it was really interesting having hearing that question or seeing that question. It just really stuck out to me, you know. And something I've been thinking about all season is what is it that failure means? And you know, like not even just a question, but I think a lot of people have something outside of what is it that failure is, or can you fail? You know, are you even setting the right goals? And I think that's something to think about because we set goals that we fall short of. And then make no mistake, if you set out to do something, you don't get there, you hit it. I would say yes, you failed to hit a goal. But then it's like, how do you put failure in a sense that it's a learning experience?
Yeah.
It's like, how do you frame that to ensure that there's always something to learn from, there's always something that you can get out of it. You know, so whether we're athletes getting injured or whether we are training for the Olympics and we don't make it, are we just going to say the year was a failure because we didn't make it to the Olympics? Was that the only thing that matters? And that it goes deeper because then it's like, is making the Olympics the only thing that matters? You know, like aren't we going to still be loved by our family if we don't make it?
We hold value.
Yeah, does our value decrease?
Yeah.
And so then it goes back and like, okay, what really does matter? Because we're always going to fail at stuff if you think about failing in that sense about a goal that we didn't reach. We're always going to fail. And it's, are we going back to understanding the process and enjoying the process and doing things that we reap out of it? Because I would say coming out here to Phoenix and meeting you guys, that's a success.
Yeah,
that is definitely a success and something that goes deep. It's not something that I would say, man, this one thing doesn't happen, so the whole thing was
bonded.
Yeah.
Totally bonded. Sorry to interrupt.
Fine.
But I think that's what I was thinking. Like, man, we might be opening the Pandora's box of like conversation at this point, because it seems as if like success and our goals, like those things are rigid, those are black and white. But it seems like the more we talk about it, the more it seems like failure kind of lies within the spectrum, gray spectrum. Because like you can fail one of your specific goals, but at the same time, is it an absolute right or wrong, yes or no failure, or is it a failure that's also a doorway? Choose your own ending.
Yeah, but I don't want people to get it the wrong place. We're not saying that it is wrong to have big goals. We're not saying it's wrong to get upset when you lose, because it hurts. It hurts to put a lot, to sacrifice a lot and get nothing in return. What we're saying is,
I'm just listening.
it's a value system. It's realizing your self-worth and not having. I think it's important to not have your value and your self-worth tied to something exterior.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be changes. There's always going to be things we can't control. And so when those things come into play, it's then how do we react to when things don't work out the way we want it?
Yeah, for sure. Seems like oftentimes like the confusion of our intrinsic value gets like muddled with the extrinsic ones.
Yeah. And it's important not to. Who we are is not what we do. What do you think about that, Tori?
I agree with you on the who we are. I'm gonna slice it up and I'm gonna start throwing the gender roles.
Okay. That's fine. We're going.
A lot of times you'll see in men identify their identity with their job, their work per se, and oftentimes you see in men say, exactly, in the sport that we're in, track and field, you'll see where a man retires.
It's black and white in track and field.
He's been a phenomenal athlete for all of his life or something, in that essence, and now he's having to re-identify his whole being with this new part of his life. I've seen more psychological problems in men with completely. Yes, with retirement, especially with the transition from being an athlete going into something else. But I completely missed yourself right there. And it's gone.
But
It'll come back.
Is it different for females though? Like what are some of you guys' goals? For us, it's as with all athletes, we've been doing this from we're kids. That's all we know how to do. Whether through college or not, you get to average age about 32, 33 retirement.
That's a subjective age.
Okay.
That's a subjective age.
So, what we're saying though,
those of us sitting at the table in their 30s, it's very subjective.
What are some goals? And I was thinking earlier this week that, man, if a female gets married, have kids, there's just a level of stability that goes along with that. They kind of have their self-worth. Is it not the same for guys, do you think?
I think,
in regards to, be more detailed.
And that transitioning, I think if a female is married and, they have their family moving forward to retirement out of track and field, there may be...
And that's exactly what I bring back to the gender role.
So we're saying from a young age, guys have always been task-oriented as most. Female has been nurturing. So, I know it's kind of a big statement, but moving away from, I would say that the sports of track and field, or it's easier to make that transition into a role of nurturing because that's what has been doing. Exactly. As opposed to guys, that's all we know how to do. We don't know anything else. So if we're not working,
that's
what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So going back to even realizing our self-worth, is it then that the parents should be instilling self-worth into the kids at a younger age?
Here's a question: how do you instill self-worth into a child?
Exactly. How do you teach somebody from like the beginning that you're important not because of what you bring, but because of who you are and like what you can share.
And that goes back. You guys, you've heard of Carl Dweck, right?
Say it again.
Carl Dweck. She spoke to the growth mindset.
Carol.
Yeah,
Carol. I was like, is this a making accent? Yes,
So-
okay, now yes. Yes, I do.
You know, and she's all about praising kids for their efforts and not on their achievement. You know, so if I come in with A's all the time, you know, if my parents praise me and say, you know, oh my God, you're great, but then I come with a B, you suck. You know, why not praise the effort? Why not praise the intrinsic thing and not the exterior? Because that's always going to fluctuate. So I think that is one way to think about it is, are we realizing what are some of the intrinsic qualities that makes us a person? Like, hey, you're a great person, you're kind. You know, it's not great job when, yes, it's great job when you do good on a test, but praise them more for their efforts, more than that achievement per se outright. So I think that's one way to go about it.
Absolutely, and I think that's what I've written too, and I think we've been lucky enough or blessed enough to work with coaches that talk to us more about being process driven and outcome driven, which again is so hard because it's not like you can just put blinders on when you're in competition. Like what we do is so black and white. Like what we do, like the clock doesn't lie.
Yeah.
Like, meter stick doesn't lie. Like it's very objective with how you perform.
Sometimes I think it does.
No, but I think that's true too. But regardless,
Listen to meters some days.
for the win, you're like really unassuming. But you're saying it's a ton here. Okay, but yeah, I think that the growth mindset versus fixed mindset definitely does like talk more. It helps foster more of being process driven instead of outcome driven because so often like the more I'm learning about like Olympic level athletes and Olympic athletes, so much of it has to do with just like ironically staying in your own lane and just like working on the stuff that you've got to work on. And you know, once you start putting it into paper, once you start looking at it out on the track, eventually things come. Now we're not known for our patience as athletes. I think you know maybe because we have to move quickly.
I think we do. I mean, you think about being dedicated for something for years on end. You know, we train for 6 months pre-season before we go. You know, being dedicated for 6 months, being ready to die. That is persistence and that is patience in a sense. You know, not a lot of persons can stay dedicated to a task for that long. You think about it.
Yeah. What do you do then when you have competition that feels like cause I feel like maybe para is different because a lot of us who start to sport. So what is para? Thank you. Paralympic athletes. So it means parallel to the Olympics and people with physical disabilities. And in my category, the amputee category, more often than not, a lot of the athletes are older getting into the sport because we acquire our disabilities at an older age. We don't start adaptive sports that young because typically, you know, XYZ happens now. This is where you are. So I think sometimes it seems like somebody honestly, sometimes it seems like someone lost their leg last week, they come back and they run a leg and all of a sudden they're just national records, which like obviously is not true. But what do you do? I mean, but I feel like able-bodied deals with the same thing. You know, you've been working on your event for how many years, and all of a sudden some kid comes out of college, drops like some insane mark, and you're like, what about you putting in all this work in that sport? Because this is just because then you get a little disenfranchised, being like, okay, well I'm process driven, but like they're I don't know what their process is.
I'm spin that back to what you said about Olympic level athletes and staying in their own lane. That's one of them.